Wow, I'm not sure what happened here. All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? All right. Welcome to our Tuesday Tech. And I'm excited that you joined us. Yeah, drop something over there. Anyway, I'm excited because we're going to talk today about communication. Communication in ministry, and we're going to look at a tool that could help you. I know it's used at the conference level here. There's a few churches that use this tool that can help you communicate with multiple different areas. So, in order to talk about this tool, I get to introduce you to a friend of mine who is on the opposite coast. And the West Coast is the best coast, but that's okay. We love you anyway. Coastly, what's going on, brother? How are you?
Hey, I'm doing excellent. I heard that about the West Coast being the best coast, but you know what? The sun rises in the east. So I just got to throw that out there. So, but great to be here. Yes, indeed.
Fantastic. So, Coastly, where are you specifically, and what is it that you do? Well, like how many?
So,
Yeah, you're working with multiple churches and stuff.
sure. So I'm on the East Coast. I live in Virginia, Harrisonburg, Virginia, to be precise. A small, beautiful town, an amazing town. And I'm a district pastor. I work with two churches. Prior to coming into the district, I worked in strategic planning and I worked with a wonderful team. I'm not going to drop names today, but I worked with a wonderful team. We rolled out an initiative with digital systems for churches. So my background and how I really got started in ministry post seminary is working on rolling out church management systems. One product called CCB, or Church Community Builder. And from that experience, this is what led to the catalyst of deploying these type of tools in my small congregation. We'll talk about later how it's transformed how our leadership is able to communicate and keep the dialogue going with
Awesome.
ministry.
I love it. We'll have to actually even bring you back on. I'd love to talk CCB with you sometime as well. We use Planning Center, and so that's another tech type thing similar to CCB. And there are just so many great tools, and that's part of why we get to come together on Tuesdays and do this stream. So I'm excited. So you manage multiple churches, and then you got multiple ministries in those churches, and then you have to try and keep all of that straight and keep communication straight, which I'm sure can be quite the challenge.
Oh, yes, it is quite the challenge. And even today, we've got smartphone, we have computers, we have emails. And if you're like me, I've got 8 different email accounts. So you've got an email account at the conference, and you got emails that use at different churches. And all these things can become quite a nightmare to just stay on top of it. So a product like Slack, a tool like Slack, and we'll talk about some of the other tools that are available as well, allows me to without getting too in depth, but it allows me to create a space that is safe for work communication or
Yeah.
ministry communication and not get it lost in the sea of other forms of communication.
That's awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited because I have just dabbled in Slack just a smidge. Icky Timey, who works here at the conference office and is part of this digital ministry team, uses it a lot in what he does, and he's always trying to pull me over. And we've had conversations. You've tried to show me, and so I am gonna just sit back a little bit today with you and learn from you. And so this is gonna be great.
Sure. So hopefully at the end, I will convince you to roll out Slack in all your different ministry areas. So let's dive right into it.
All right.
All right. All right. So, what is Slack? That's a great question. So, Slack is a channel based messaging platform. Today, we're going to go through our little agenda just to show what we're going to talk about. So, first, we're going to talk about the big reason why. Why do you want to spend the time learning this technology and deploying the technology? We're going to talk about the problems that it solves. We're going to talk to you about how much it costs. And then we talk about setting up your workspace, and we'll conclude with questions. Before we dive in, I just want to share a story that is not unique, but it's one that is actually happening in all of churches, our churches now. Several years ago, when I started in ministry, I went to a church, visited them the first Sabbath. And when I walked in, the pastor had me fill out an index card, card, hey, you're visiting, put that in the offering plate. And I did that. This church was a church that was deploying digital systems. And literally, it was my first time in the area. I had just moved from Michigan, so I didn't know anything. But as he entered me into his digital system, the next week, when I came back to church, his church was near a shopping center, and most members or guests would visit by parking in a shopping center and walking across into his facility. Well, the shop owner got a little upset that all these Adventists were gathering on Sabbath morning and taking up valuable space for his customers. So he said on this Friday, Saturday, he's towing everyone that's not a a shopper. So because this church had a great digital system, they were able to get the word out. Now they use CCB, and we're not talking about CCB today, but I'm talking to you about the importance of having a great digital system where the minister was able to send out a message to everyone who's ever come to the church and say, hey, if you're planning to visit us this Sabbath, don't park in the shopping center or you'll get towed. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this story is because in most churches before the pandemic, the time you make those critical announcements is during the announcements. But guess what? On that Sabbath, if that happened Sabbath morning, my car would have been towed away. And as a guest, I would have been very upset. And I probably would have never come back to that church. So this just to highlight the importance of being able to communicate internally as well as externally. So today we're going to talk about internal communication and what Slack does for you. Now, the real reason why I selected Slack for our church contact, because there are multiple tools out there, is because it is very easy to set up. The thing about me in ministry is I don't like working hard. Let me correct that. I work hard. I work too hard to add other challenging tasks to how I do ministry. So I'm looking for something that's not going to add too much of my workload, but when it is deployed, it will reduce my workload in some capacity. So you want it to be easy to adopt, you want it to be easy to scale, and you want it also to create an atmosphere where your members are connected. I'm going to tell you another story. Before ministry, my experience or my interest was aviation. And one of the things that I admire about aviation, and for those who love to fly, I'm going to tell you a little thing about aviation. When you get on an airliner for the very first time or whenever you fly frequently, many of the crews that you see up front, the first time that they get together often is the time of the flight. So that means you got a pilot and a co-pilot. They may work for the same company. That company has 15,000 employees. They may have 10,000 pilots. So the chances of a pilot working with the same co-pilot every flight is very slim. So then you ask yourself, well, how are two individuals who are meeting for the first time able to work together to get a flight from point A to point B? Well, it's because they standardized the way they do things. So the way they communicate, their operating procedures are all the same. The captain knows about it. The first officer knows about it. So when they get into the cockpit, there's an expectation of what the captain's going to do and what the first officer is going to do. So that's my background. How does that connect to church? Well, if we can create a digital system that creates a similar experience that everyone goes through, it makes it that much easier to bring on new leadership into leadership and also transfer information or practices to the next generation. You create one way of doing things and everyone is able to adhere to that process, and it makes it a whole lot easier. So the first thing that we'll talk about is Slack is very easy to set up. I looked at competitor solutions, and we'll talk about them in a little bit. But this one is something that you don't need a college degree in computer information systems. If you can set up an email account, you can set up and manage a Slack. It's also scalable, completely scalable. What does that mean? Is if you have a church of 5 people, a church of 100,000 members, and if you do, you probably have the largest church in the Adventist church in the world. But if you have a small church or a large church, this tool will fit great in either environment. Easy to train. Once you train one person, they can pass on their knowledge to someone else. So literally in my small congregations, which were not tech savvy before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, I sat down with my leadership team one after another, and now they're training other people on how to get onto Slack and how to navigate Slack, and they're just keeping the ball rolling. So that's awesome. It's also very easy to add leadership. Now, my approach first was to get my leaders, my church board using Slack, not the whole congregation, but just my leaders, and create that discipline of focusing the communications through that particular channel. And the last thing that we learned, and what I really love about Slack, is that it's also cloud based. I don't know about you, but you may go someplace with your computer or your phone and you may misplace your phone. I pray it never happens to you, but if it does, you don't have to worry about losing your data because everything is stored in the cloud. So literally, if my house burned today with my computer and the insurance says we're going to take care of you, ministry can still function because I can grab another computer, log back in, and all the data, all the conversations, all the documents that I've shared are stored in the cloud. So I pick up exactly where I left off. Now, before we go to the next slide, what are some comparable technologies? What is out there that you can use that's different than Slack? Well, Microsoft Teams is another great product. I don't use Microsoft Teams for the church. I use it for my conference communications because Microsoft Teams is designed for a one environment. It's great for if you work in one organization, you can have a Microsoft Teams account. As for me as a pastor in a two church district, I don't like the idea of having to log out of my Microsoft account, then log into another Microsoft account to get into my different churches. With Slack, I can have all my churches, all the organizations that I'm a part of, and I'll show you that a little bit later, all in one app, and I can just tab between the apps, and I can literally put on my District 1 hat, my District 2 hat, and keep on going. In addition to that, Discord is another great program out there that offers similar services. Focus works a little bit different. I play around with Discord, but I found that for church, Slack gives you a turnkey solution. And then finally, there's Facebook. There's Facebook groups. There's Facebook, you name it. Now, the disadvantage with using Facebook for church communications is that in addition to your church members being on Facebook, their high school sweetheart, their crush, oops, I'm sorry, you're going to have to edit that out. But everyone that's interesting to them, the cat videos, whatever's out there, the memes, that's all the distractions that are out there. So with Slack, you can create a space where it's one space where you can focus and you can focus on the particular ministry. All right, let's keep going. So what are some of the key benefits of using Slack? What problems does it solve? Attention span. We know that attention is the most expensive commodity today. This is why corporations pay billions of dollars in advertising ads just to create a 15-second spot to get you to pay attention to them. So with Slack, it allows us to take all of our distractions for our church members and create one space where they can just know when I come into the Slack environment, the workspace, I'm just talking church. And then after that, I can go back to my text app, my Facebook, my WhatsApp, whatever, and do what I enjoy doing elsewhere. It's great for building community. Why? Because I can't tell you how many times, if you're in a larger church, someone's in church and they may do something up front that you're like, oh, that was great. And now you're like, well, who's that person? How do I get in touch with them? Where if you have a Slack culture in your church, anyone who's a part of the Slack community can communicate with everyone in the Slack workspace without having to go up to them and ask them, what's your name, what's your number, and go through that whole rigmarole. It's very easy to get connected. It's very easy to plug in your leaders, and I'll dive in and I'll show you how I set up one of my Slacks where I've got the different leadership channels, and you can plug in your leaders and the ongoing conversation can happen. And then lastly, you have, so I just put it there, the ministry specific lanes, we'll talk about that. And then the most important selling item for me for Slack, if this doesn't convince you, I don't know what will, but searchable message archives. How many times have you as a ministry leader or as a pastor or as an elder or a deacon, you have a conversation with someone and you send a text message, 6 months later, they start talking about the thing that you talked about 6 months ago. And now you've deleted that text message, you've deleted that email, or it's buried under thousands of other emails. And one thing we know is that searching a text message is not as intuitive. You can't just do a keyword search and find it, especially you get a lot of text message, which in Slack, you have the ability to search messages. If you had a conversation about the color of the carpet, 6 months ago, you can find that exact conversation. You can jump back in time to those exact message points and keep the conversation going. And for me, that has helped me a lot. Every conversation I have, I followed up with a Slack message. I create a digital footprint so later on I can reference it. So when someone comes up to me and they say, oh, yeah, 4 months ago we were talking about this, I can go back to that exact message and refresh my mind as to what we talked about. Okay, so now we're going to get into how much does it cost. It sounds all great. I've got a small church pastor. We don't have a budget. We're barely making budget. Don't worry. You can get started with Slack for free. That's right, free. You can set up a free Slack account for your congregation. And what you get with the free account is you get everything that Slack has to offer, but there's a limit to how long, not how long, but how many messages are archived. So your first 10,000 messages will become searchable. So once you get to 10,001 message, the first message that was sent maybe a month, 2 months in prior, it will become archived. It's still there, but it's just not going to be indexed and searchable under the free account. So the thing that you have to ask yourself is, hey, as we generate conversation, do I want to invest in being able to access all of my messages, a complete archive? So if you're a larger church and they're like, yes, really important that a conversation that happened 6 months ago, my leadership has access to, Slack has different paid programs. So we're going to look at the tiers really quick. I'll put them on the screen. So you have the free account, as I've shared with you. It's going to be $0, 10,000 archive. Then there's the pro account, and most churches, the pro account will be good enough. Now, just keep in mind that $6.67 is for a yearly subscription, and that's per active account in your account. So if you have a leadership team with 100 members, you want to just be like, take that 100, multiply by 667, and that's going to be your yearly cost per month for your leadership team. So you want to just balance that out. If you pay monthly, it's going to be $8 and change. So you can go on the website and find it. So most congregations between the free and the pro, you should be fine. Personally, I use the free account because what I do personally is all my short-term tactical quick communications happen in Slack. Anything that has to be archived for longer, I use it through email and CCB. And we can talk about that at a later date. But I put anything that needs to be archived in CCB. So it's a separate service that I pay for. But anything that's happening in real time, talking about visiting someone, someone's sick, or discussions leading up to a board meeting, anything with my leadership that I'm like, this doesn't need to have a long shelf life, I use it through my free account. And then if I feel like we need to go back, I will go and pay for that. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dive right in. We're going to show you a quick Slack account. And then after that, we're going to actually create an account. So I'm going to do that in the next couple of minutes. So here we go. I'm going to stop the sharing and we're going to dive into my Slack. Here we
This is
go.
awesome, Coasley.
Yes, yes.
This is amazing
Here
stuff.
we go.
All right,
there we go. Here we go. So I'm going to show you, this is the real deal. Going to walk you through what we have here. So if you look at the very top, I've got different workspaces because of the different organizations that I am a part of. All of this is on my one Slack app that is accessible on my smartphone, it's accessible on my tablet, and it's also on my computer. So now we're on my computer. So at the very top left, the G is what I call the district account. And I'm just going to flash in. I'm not going to stay in it because there's confidential information there, but that gives you an idea. This is the general one. I do have, and this I can share because it is a public space. So if I go into that public space, this is an organization that I joined in that has a Slack account. It has nothing to do with ministry. It's all about aviation, but I can dive in and talk to people from around the world. So I've got that Slack going. I also have another aviation one. And then here are my two churches down here. So you have my Charlottesville SDA church, my Harrisonburg church, and then you have other organizations that I'm a part of. So Slack is not just for one church, but you can be in other organizations. So let me just give you a quick tour of their workspace. So as you can see, this is the workspace. Inside the workspace, you've got channels. So in this case, This is a training channel, training with coach. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. You have a general channel where everyone belongs in that channel. So if I want to see who the people are in that channel, I can click on here. These are all the people that are in the channel. This is actually my cousin right here and someone else that I was training in how to use Slack. So that the channel, you create different workspaces and it's very easy. You can click on channel. You can create a new channel. So normally what I would do for church, I would create a channel and I'd call it admin and I say elders. So if I can spell, there we go. Now I put admin in front of it. So any of my channels, we're going to say add specific people. We're going to say skip for now. So any of the channels that I create, I put in a keyword in front of it so that it makes it easier for people in my workspace to find it. So any leadership channels, I'll call it either admin. If I have a worship channel, I've got a worship band, I will create that channel with them and then I can add people in it. Now here, you can also send direct messages to individuals. You don't need to have their phone number or their email address. Once they're inside your Slack account, you can send them a message directly. So here, if you go to the message, someone can fill out their profile, put in information. I showed my information right there, but you can look at a phone number, email address, whatever details that they choose to share. That's available right then and there.
We've got a question here, Coasley. I've got
yes.
this right here. Do all your members need to be on the Pro?
So that's a good question. And I don't have the answer right off the top of my head, but it says, when I looked at it, it says any active profile. So anyone that you select as an active, that's what you're going to pay for under the Pro. So in my church, I've got a church of 100 in attendance, 23 leaders are on there. So that would be 23 times 6 and change, because that's my active leadership. So you don't want to do it for your whole entire congregation. This is just for tactical for leadership. But on a free account, if you're doing just a free account, put everyone in there. I mean, you could have two Slack. You could have the Slack for the church at large where it's free, and then your leadership, you can pay for it and create a separate Slack for them. That's how I would approach that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. So now let's get to the fun part, searching keyword. This is where the magic happens. Anything that you want to find a message, you type it in here, you can search for anything, messages, files, you can search in channels, you can search people, and it's just a query. You can say in general, anything before this particular message, after this message, anything from a particular person, you can search right there. So in your church, and I would dive into my church, but because it's confidential information, I won't go through it, but you can play around with that. The next key area is going to be right here in that right pane. So let's jump into the channels. We'll jump into the general channel. And you can see when I jump into the general, the right pane changes and it will give you additional information. So here you can go in and you can change the topic of your channel. So you can go in, and if you have an elder board, but you want to focus on a particular aspect, you can change the topic and have your leaders check on it. You can change it every day. You can change the description. People can look at it. You have your members, you have shortcuts, you have all the files in there. You also have a find that will search that specific channel as opposed to the whole entire Slack. And then at the end, you've got things that you can do. One of my favorite things to do is jumping back in time. So if you've had a bunch of Slack communications and you want to go back to a particular date, you can go back to a particular date, select that date, and it will bring you back to that time of that message, and you'll be able to search that. So the next question is, how do you add people to your Slack? Very easy. So we're going to click on this, and you can simply say invite people. Put in their email address. So if you're at a church elders meeting or church board and you want to add your leadership, you set up your Slack. You just say, hey, can I have your email address? Put in their email address. Well, I would say first have them download the app. It makes it easier that way. Once the app is on their device, you take their email address. They'll get an invitation via email. They click on it, put in their name, one more thing, and they're added to your Slack and you're logged in. Now, a question that someone may ask is, do you have to remember your username and password? No. I forget my username and password. I simply need to remember my email address. And every workspace that you create will be associated with an email address. So at a later date, you can say if you forget which Slack sites that you are into, you can find it based on your email address. So I've had leaders delete the app, forget it, whatever. But as long as they have an email address, we can get them back in very easily. Okay, I'm looking at the time, running short. There's just so much information. What we're going to do now is we're going to actually create a Slack. I'm going to use the next 3 minutes to create a Slack as fast as possible. And we're going to see if we can add Pastor Tim into the Slack. And while we're doing that, you can fire away with questions and we'll go from there. So to do it, we're going to jump on right on the web. So now we're on the web. How do you join Slack? Simply go on there on the slack.com. I know I went really fast. So it's slack.com. And once you're there, say try it for free. You can do that right now. And in this Slack, Tim, remind me what we were talking about. We're what was the site that we were going to create?
Oh, in Hills
North Hills.
Church. In Hills Church.
In Hills Church. So we're going to do in Hills.
The number, the letter in. Yep.
Okay, in Hills Church. So I'm going to see if this is available. I did not look at this ahead of time, but let's see if it's available. It says, oh, sorry. It helps if I read. I'm going to do my email address. Here we go. There we go. Here we go. It's going to send me a mail code to my email address. So I'm going to dive into my email address. Won't show it to you because I get tons of emails. And you'll be like, Pastor, how do you keep track of your email? So basically it sent me a code, and that code, I will simply type that code back in. So I'm typing it from the email. Okay, and there it is. It's going to say, do you want to create a workspace? And I will say, create a workspace. I'm going to say, is it okay to send me emails about Slack? No, because I have tons of Slack emails. So the name of your team is going to be In Hills Church. I'm just going to do it all lowercase, like a computer programmer. There we go. And then we hit next. And it says, what is your team working on? We're going to say admin elder. So we're going to start with the elders, and you hit next. And then who do you email most? So we're going to say, Pastor Tim, what's your email address? We're going to add you right now, real time.
You got it. PastorTimmyC@gmail.com.
Tim E.C.
TIMMYC.
TIMMYC.
Yep.
At Gmail.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if I want to add someone else, I can add them right now. So if someone wanted to post in, you can do it. We'll just do Pastor Tim. We'll say add teammates. He's going to get an invitation in his email right now. And it's going to say, do you want to allow this site? We're going to open it up. We're going to open it up to Slack. And then boom, I'm going to show you my Slack account where the In Hills Church. So give me a moment to.
Right,
here we go. Give me one moment. You got the email, so you're already on there. So I'm gonna stop the sharing and show on the Slack screen really quick. So he's got the email. Pastor Tim already joined with the email. So he's in. And then now if I wanted to add him to the elder, simply go here and he's already added. Because when I created, he's joined the channel and he's good to go. He's in, and now he can download the app on the email, and literally he's good to go. And then what I can do is I can go in and I can edit my profile. So I can go to my profile and I can say edit profile, upload a photo, put in my display name. So my name will be, oops, going a little fast, but edit profile. So instead of this, I'll just say, okay, I'm typing really fast. Then I can fill out the rest of my details, upload a photo, and then we're good. We're in, we're locked in, and I'm a part of this organization. Now, the last thing that I'll share with you, and then we'll go to questions, and as with the time that's left. If you have a question, how do I do something in Slack? To the right of your search field, there's a big help area, and this will get you all the answers. Anyone in your leadership who wants to know how to do something, all the answers are available right there. This is just the icing on the cake, And to really get into it, you just need to play around with it and you're good to go. So that's what I had for us today. And I'm pausing for questions.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned you use this with the elders. What are some other areas in your ministry that you use this in? What kinds of channels have you used?
Okay, so I'm so glad you asked. So I put my worship team in a channel, so the worship platform participants, so that way, as the services is going on, I can send a message to the AV team. All the worship platform participants. We're all in a real time communication during the service. So if you ever watch me at my church and I'm looking down, I'm actually talking to them back and forth. Also, our food pantry, we coordinate all of our ministries, food pantry, jail ministry. Each ministry has a channel, and all of our leaders are in it. So as we're setting up the day of, we're having last minute communications right there. Um, Another thing that we do at our church that's been a huge success is we have a channel called a prayer channel, and literally all the leadership that has prayer requests, they just post it inside of the prayer channel, and everyone gets the prayer request, and they're able to pray for that particular prayer request. So those are some of the ways that we use it as well. Also, the last thing that we do that's really amazing, I know a lot of people use Zoom for meetings at church. You can add a Zoom app integration into your Slack. So if you want to start a Zoom meeting, you just do a keystroke /Zoom, and you can initiate a Zoom meeting with those people in that channel right then and there in real time. So,
Oh wow. I also saw a Google Suites integration, and we actually did a little thing on how to
yes.
set up a Google Suite for your organization a few weeks ago. So
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So we have another question here. What's the difference between Slack and
Okay.
WhatsApp?
Oh, so I'm so glad that you asked. And I play with both of them. WhatsApp is great for one on one communication. But when you're talking about organizational and having channels and having that level of integration, that's where WhatsApp breaks down in. So I know a lot of leaders do it, and you'll have friends from all over the place with phone numbers and so forth. But with Slack, I can really create different channels. And I call it ministry lanes, where someone will be focused in one area, and then I can still have the one-to-one conversations. So
That's great. I'm thinking
yes,
through like our
good,
guest services. We have a guest services team, and it would be wonderful if while everything's going on, people could say, "Hey, I just saw a guest," or "Hey, I need to," we're out of our gift for guests, or "Hey, there's some kids wandering around looking for their classroom," or just something even prep for them. Hey, this week, here's what's coming up this week, so that you can be aware when you talk to people that come in, our members and guests. And so our guest
absolutely
services or greeters, some many churches call it, but would be another great
good.
avenue for that. Yeah.
Sure, sure. And there's one more thing, and I shouldn't leave you with this. This is probably the game changer for me. One of the areas in ministry where one thing that we struggle with as pastors is setting boundaries, right? We want to have boundaries, but the phone will ring at 11 o'clock at night, midnight. With Slack, when you introduce this culture in your church, you can set up snooze times. So you can decide at a certain time your notifications aren't going to go off. it Everyone else will see that there's a Z. They see that the pastor is resting. However, people can still send you a message. So I tell all my leaders, if you have an inspiration at 3 in the morning, Slack it to me because it's not going to disturb me. And at 6 or whenever I get up in the morning, I go on Slack of course, after I've had my devotion. And then I can go in and say, oh, these are the messages, and I can follow up when it's convenient for me. Most recently, I went on vacation. I put my way on vacation. So all my leaders know, they see the Z, they see the vacation, the Palm Beach, they know pastor's away, and they can send messages. And if I'm curious, I can peep in, but I strongly encourage you to enjoy those boundaries, take a break, and then plug in when you are able to plug in. So,
We could all use some self care after this past year, right? So.
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Kelsey, thank you so
So,
much for your time and your energy. Thank you for what you do for the kingdom of heaven. And this is a great tool, I think, that we can make use of across multiple different areas in our churches. Make
sure.
communication more smooth, more useful, more tactical in so many ways.
Hmm.
So great. Thanks so
Indeed.
much.
And thank you so much. Yes. Thank you for having me on board. Really excited. And like I said, you can always, I'm in the group. So if you have questions, I'll be checking on them too. And I'll be glad to help you on your journey as well.
Awesome. And we're going to bring you back for some CCB madness too at some point. That'd be great.
Awesome.
All right, you guys.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll be back next Tuesday. And for now, good luck diving into that technology. Hopefully if these videos and whatnot, if they're useful to you, if you're learning things, we would love to know that. We'd love to know which ones have been helpful. If there's an area of technology and ministry that you'd specifically like some help in, we'd love to know that. We can create either a stream like this that dives into those topics, or there's lots of different people that, like Coasley is an expert in Slack, and someone else might be an expert in audio, and someone else might be an expert in all sorts of different things. And so we have the know-how as a group. This is why we're a ministry network. The digital support, right here, right there, digital support ministry network. And so we. Yeah, it's always opposite the way you want to point. But we want to totally invite us all to be together in this and to support one another. So let's get some conversation rolling. If there's anything you'd like to dive into next time, just let us know. For now, thanks so much for being on here, and we will see you soon.